Ra, the great sun god, possibly the earliest version of a solar archetype that we've seen in any mythology. And he embodies the sun as both a life giver and overseer. Worship of him reflects the human psyche's need for a central source of order, something constant and reliable, cycling above the chaos of daily life. To the Kemetic mind, Ra wasn't just a physical sun, he was the conscious force of illumination, justice, and clarity. And psychologically, this represents the human longing for a principle that sees all and keeps the world aligned. He is the father and the ultimate authority. His role as head of the pantheon parallels the internalized father archetype of our psychology, the voice of authority, law, and protection. His worship connected individuals to a sense of cosmic discipline and moral clarity. For the psyche, he could both comfort and constrain, offering structure but also enforcing submission to this divine order. Now, through death, renewal, and unconsciousness, his daily journey through the duat, the underworld, symbolized descent into darkness and rebirth at dawn. On a psychological level, this mirrors the human confrontation with the unconscious, the fear of death, and the hope of renewing. Worshippers reenacting this cycle through ritual were externalizing the process of ego death and rebirth, integrating shadow material and finding assurance in knowing that even the darkest night is temporary and there's always an awakening that we see reflected in Ra on the daily basis, right? That's the whole myth. Now, when we talk about one of his more famous acumens is the Eye of Ra, which is all about wrath and projection. Now, we've heard many deities termed as the Eye of Ra, my favorite being Sekhmet. Now, the myth of Ra's eye is that it is sent out as a fiery force to punish humanity. It reveals the psychic struggle with projection and vengeance. To devotees, the aspect of worship acknowledges that divine order isn't just about warmth and life. It's also about destructive punishment when deserved. And psychologically, it represents both the human fear of unchecked rage, we see that in Sekhmet, and the recognition that wrath, when harnessed, it can serve as a protective role. Now, the collective solar identity of Ra, which is the biggest component, makes him prominent in religion, shows how the collective identity mirrors the sun's universality. By elevating Ra, the Kemetic people were essentially projecting their need for unity and coherence onto the heavens. Worship of Ra bound society together under a shared symbol, the sun as king. For the psyche, this created a sense of belonging to something that was both larger and eternal. And this dissolves a personal gap while placing yourself firmly within the cosmic order in your design role. It fits within the belief system. So Ra was not just a fiery ball in the sky. He was the Kemetic psyche eternalizing its deepest needs. Order over chaos, life over death, fatherly authority, the cycle of renewal, and the terrifying duality of light and fire. In psychological terms, Ra functioned as both the superego, this overseeing authority, and the self, the wholeness of life, death, and rebirth all bound in one. To worship Ra was to align with one's inner life with the rhythm of the cosmos, that you would see that every day. And if you were in line with that rhythm, you were in line with the greater concept of Ma'at. So we can see how this plays into a large concept belief system, but works on individual levels as people are acclimating themselves to what they're seeing or envisioning coming from their deity.